Welcome, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order, item 2.1. And Angie, we can confirm that all trustees are present.
Angie?
Yes.
No, yeah, she told me. She nodded.
Yeah, sorry.
Item 3.1, public comment guide. Do we have any public comments? No? Okay. That brings us to item 4.1, candidate interviews to fill board vacancy. The SBCC Board of Trustees has 2 candidates for the board vacancy in Trustee Area 2, Goleta. 5 candidates submitted applications, but 3 subsequently withdrew from consideration. Each candidate has been given a list of 6 questions. The candidate can select any 4 questions to respond to. The board will have 15 minutes for follow-up questions. To be expedient, each candidate will be given the set of questions 5 minutes before they come up. For the public record, the 6 questions the candidates can choose from are the following. The first one is, why are you interested in becoming a member of this Board of Trustees? What steps did you take before applying to learn about the college and trustee job and decide whether this would be a good fit for you? What do you see as the major issues facing Santa Barbara City College in the next decade, and how do you think you might contribute to their solution? Have you been on a board before? Discuss an experience when you have had to work with different people or groups to develop a consensus or achieve a common goal. Some of the issues that come to the board are highly contentious. Tell us about a time in the past when you had to handle a dispute and find a resolution when making a decision on a team. Assume that the vote taken on a particular issue did not go your way. How would you respond? What course of action might you anticipate taking? And last, if major reductions in funding were to occur, what would be your priorities for the most important programs or services to retain? In your previous work, how have you determined priorities for funding or staff time? And so with that, we will invite Mr. Robert Miller to the podium.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I guess I just begin. My name is Robert Miller, and I'm certain you have my application and know a little bit about me, and hopefully we'll get to know a little bit. You'll get to know a little bit more about me as we go on. I've been handed 6 questions and asked to choose 4, so I've just gone for the first 4. I don't know if you have the same questions, same list, and so I don't need to repeat the question, but the first question, why I'm interested in becoming a member of the board, and what steps did I take to apply to learn about the college and the job before deciding it was something for me. I have to be candid with you. It's not anything I had ever thought about doing. A couple of people in the community came to me and said there was an open position for the Board of Trustees at Santa Barbara City College, and they thought I would be a good addition to the board. And my first response was, I don't have any specific background in education other than obtaining my own education and counseling my son to get an education. Perhaps other activities I had as a lawyer and involved in managing a law firm. But as a result of being asked if I would be interested, I got on the computer and started reading about Santa Barbara City College, reading about community colleges. I found a couple articles by Mr. Beebe and read those articles. It gave me some insights on different issues community colleges face. Read some materials from the League for, I don't remember the full title, but it gave me a lot of information about community colleges in California. And it just caused me to start thinking about community colleges and their role. But that's essentially what happened. In the process of doing it, I prepared my binder of materials so that I could review those before I came to the meeting today. There's a lot more I could say in answer to number 1. I see it as a great opportunity to serve I started out my life after college in service. I was in the Peace Corps. I got involved in politics. I worked at the State Department on refugee affairs in the late 1970s, which was a fantastic opportunity for me to deal with a very difficult issue at the time. But then, and then after that, for a short while, I actually worked at the Aspen Institute. That I was pleased to see they awarded their award to the school in 2013. I didn't work on education issues. I was working on helping a program get started that dealt with international affairs. And that went on for maybe 9 months, and then I decided that I'd really been a staff person working for somebody else for a number of years, and I was going to go to law school and do something on my own. So I left Washington, moved to Minneapolis, and got a law degree, and kind of got away from public service for the next 30 years as I tried to become the best lawyer I could be. But then when I retired and found myself involved in a local neighborhood issue that led to another issue and another issue, I found myself becoming more involved in Goleta than I'd ever been involved anyplace else I'd lived. And it was also an opportunity for me to meet people in the community. I better go on here to answer some of these other questions. But question number 2, what do you see as the major issues facing the college? I guess obviously, with my background, I can't be the authority on that, but from what I've read, one, I would expect that money, I would expect, is always a major issue for an institution like this. I have read and learned that the structural deficit has been reduced in recent past from something in the area of $9 million, I think, to $6 million. So it looks like the school's on the right track. But my guess would be that money is also always a major issue, because the school can't do anything without the money. You can't hire the best faculty, you can't have the best facilities, you can't have the programs without having sufficient funds. I also understand that another kind of general issue for the board, I think, is community relations. I understand there was a bond issue that was defeated in recent years that I've also learned is somewhat unusual in California, that bond issues for community colleges normally succeed. And because of the loss of that bond, I assume that's put a crimp on the finances for the school. And I know that there are efforts being made to try to establish better relations with the community, and that's an area where I think I can assist. Certainly in my district in Goleta, where I now know a lot of people, I know the community leaders, and I'm involved in community issues. I think I can be of assistance in a variety of ways with that issue. Next question, some of the issues that come to the board are highly contentious. Tell us about a time in the past when you've had to handle a dispute and find a resolution when making a decision on a team. This is kind of a softball question for me, because the one thing I did when I moved to Goleta after retiring is I decided to do legal mediation. And I went down to, I was a trial lawyer, so I had disputes all 30 years of my career. I defended major motor vehicle manufacturers. And every case I had is a dispute, and every case I had, you want to resolve it, and you want to resolve it before going to trial. And I really discovered that I had a talent for that, and I enjoyed trying to resolve cases for my client in a cost-effective way. So I decided to try to do some mediation. I thought maybe I could even have a small business at it. But basically what I've done, I've been a volunteer for the court in Santa Barbara and Ventura, primarily in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara County Superior Court has one of the best mediation programs in the country, and it's really, really well run, and it depends on volunteers. So I've basically served as a volunteer doing mediations. I've done nearly 100 of them now, and I really enjoy it. It's a process of getting to know the parties, getting to know the lawyers, and getting to know what's motivating those parties. And being creative and trying to find a solution. I get tremendous satisfaction out of finding solutions and resolving the case. But the question here asks, tell you about a time when I had to handle a particularly difficult one. I guess for that I would go back to my law firm when I was involved in at all levels of firm management. I was the managing partner of our Los Angeles office for a period of time. I was the associate development partner for part of the time, for a number of years, which I really enjoy, which meant helping the associates come along in their professional career. But I think one of the most difficult areas I had was when associates would be coming up for partner. And the partners were divided about whether that person should become a partner or not. There were always difficult issues, and I found myself in the middle of those issues a number of times. In one particular time, there was a woman associate up for, and I was in a minority promoting her for partnership. And it became a big issue in the firm. But by this time, the firm was rather large, 200 lawyers, and we had 10 different offices. And there was a feeling among some of the female partners and associates that we weren't treating the female associates equally well when their time came up for partnership. And I was on the, I ended up being on the losing side of a candidate. But it became rather contentious. It was the most contentious issue I had been involved in the firm. I was the proponent. I was the main proponent for this candidate. But we all walked away from this, still speaking to each other, still on good terms. And the candidate eventually did become a partner in the firm. I had to spend time convincing her to stay because it was quite a setback for her. But I had numerous issues at my law firm that were difficult personal issues that I felt I was always able to deal with in a forthright way and come away where we could still speak to each other and find the right solution. I guess those are my answers to those 4 questions. And if you have other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I believe you do still have some time. And so you have 4 minutes, so you can feel free to help us learn more about any.
Okay. I actually made some notes here of things I wanted to stress. Let me take a look, and I'd be happy to do that. This is kind of related to the last question. I thought about if you would ask me the question about how I deal with other members, or how I might deal with other members of the board on an issue where I might be in the minority. And I guess my answer to that, I think the most important thing is listening. People get hardened in their positions, particularly if you spend a lot of time preparing to push a particular issue, and you go to a meeting or where you want to win. Everybody likes to prevail in their position. But I think I've learned over the years that you have to be prepared to accept that you might be wrong. And you really have to listen carefully, not just sit there while the other person's talking, but you really have to try to listen. And I think you also have to try to resolve issues that are difficult where you may be in the minority, is to try to come to a set of common facts that you can agree on. And then take those common facts and see how they apply to the arguments on both sides. But even when you end up losing, I think the most important thing about listening is so that everybody feels like that their arguments are being heard. And it's so important, I think, that everybody feels like their arguments are being heard. I know I've been in, I won't tell you the organization, but I've been in an organization recently where I was in a very distinct minority, and I didn't prevail. I sometimes walk away from those thinking, what did I do wrong? How come I couldn't muster the arguments that would convince everybody else that I had the right position? But I also walked away sometimes thinking they weren't listening to me. And I don't know why I felt that. And perhaps it was on me to make sure that everybody understood what I was saying. But so I guess it's going into a meeting and having an open mind, and that's easier said than done, particularly if you've spent a lot of time on an issue. As a trial lawyer, I was an advocate. That's what I did all the time. So I more than other people probably have to try to tell myself to listen and not be immediately an advocate, but somebody who wants to solve problems. And I think that's one of the things I excel at, is analyzing problems, figuring out what the solutions are, and implementing the solutions. That's what I've always prided myself on, whether I was in politics, whether I was a lawyer, doing almost any professional endeavor I've been involved in. That's what I think I'm really good at. My time up?
You got 1 minute.
1 minute.
Yes,
Okay.
please take it and help us learn more.
Let me just tell you one other thing about my background that I think qualifies me for this position, and that is I think I'm a quick study. As a trial lawyer, when you go to trial, cross-examination is probably the most important thing you do. It's trying to find holes in the experts that the other party brings to trial. And what that really requires, and I dealt with all kinds of specialties in my career, all kinds of health specialties, because my cases usually involved injuries from brain damage to spinal cord injuries to internal injuries. I dealt with statistical experts, engineering experts, geological experts. The list just goes on and on. And when I first started out, I was intimidated by that, having to cross-examine somebody.
Time's up.
Okay. So I was intimidated by that, but I learned that I was able to, at least for a 2-hour period of time when I had to cross-examine somebody, I could learn enough about their specialty that I could stay in the same ballgame with them for that period of time, and that always gave me tremendous satisfaction.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, for your time and thoughtfulness. For the second part, we will open it up to the board for any follow-up questions, and I will start with Student Trustee Panbecci, and if you don't have any questions, you can just pass.
You guys can go ahead first. You can go ahead.
No, we can start with you, Student Trustee Panbecci.
I'm just waiting for the other questions.
Okay, we're just going to come around once like this, just if we have 15 minutes, so she'll start the timer. Okay,
That's
so
fine. That's okay.
we'll start it, and then so we can start with my left, Jonathan, Student Trustee Aboud.
So, housing right now and the cost of it is a major issue for our students. What do you think is an appropriate way to alleviate that, and what do you think the college's role is?
Oh, gosh. Housing is a huge issue, and it's a subject about which I didn't know a lot when I got appointed to the Goleta Planning Commission. I think it's probably, just leaving the college out of it for a moment, it's probably one of the biggest issues we have in this country right now, particularly in California. I confess I don't know a lot about how students are housed at Santa Barbara City College. 2 weeks ago, my son was with me, and I drove him and my wife through the campus to look at the school. And I was trying to figure out, do the students live here or don't they live here? Or do they all have to go out and find their own housing? I simply don't know the answer to the question. I wish I knew more.
Thank you.
I wish we knew. It's a question that we have pondered. First of all, let me say thank you for applying. I think it takes an enormous something to say, I'll put my name in and volunteer to serve, because that's really what we do. This is a volunteer thing. I was interested in your response to the bond issue that you have looked at, and curious to see, you know, how might we reach the voters and with what message in Goleta? How would we do that?
I think probably it is, you know, there's so many community organizations, everything from the city council to the planning commission to an organization called the Goodland Coalition that I belong to that's involved in growth and environmental issues. There's the Chamber of Commerce, there's the, you know, I don't know if there's a Lions Club or Rotary Club, but there are just, if you sat down and started writing out all the groups that there are, I think those are a great way to communicate your message. And finding opportunities to do that is the key. But that, of course, takes time. That means that the trustee for that district, President Beebe or the president of the board, people have to be willing to go and talk to those groups. And I think that's just the best way you do it. It's basic networking. And as an institution trying to get the word out about all the good things you were doing, I guess we'd have to think creatively about a message we would want to give and have a consistent message about all the good things we're doing. How many people in this community really know about the Aspen Award? How many people know about the Guided Pathways program that the school is participating in that seems to be an exciting opportunity to really expand for the school to expand its reach. So, you know, you talk about communication, you can't buy advertising, it's too expensive. It's a community networking process, I think.
Yeah, just a follow-up. The fact remains that the reason we went to the voters for a bond measure had to do with buildings that were badly in need, and that need continues to exist. So we're going to have to think creatively about how to reach the voters for our next effort to do this.
I think the voters in this area need to be reminded about what a treasure this institution is and how critical it is to our economy and to the students who finish from high schools here. I know not every student is from this district, but I think one of our priorities, I would assume, are the students that are growing up in this district. And it's hard to imagine a community without Santa Barbara City College. And I think people haven't really grasped on to how community colleges fill a void between four-year degrees and high school degrees, and without them, where would we be? I think those are the kind of messages we have to get out.
Thank you.
I too wanted to thank you for applying. I know sometimes sometimes I look at vacancies and so on, and I think, oh, I can't fit that into my life, although I'm retired and I should be able to. So I appreciate that you saw it and said, okay, I can try for this one. Tell me about your planning commission experience compared to your law experience, because you've talked about your law experience, and that's fascinating. But then planning commission do you end up doing a lot of listening there, or how does that
Oh, yes. And
yeah.
well, you do listening not only with your fellow commissioners, but you have a lot of community input from community members who come to the meetings. Every meeting the good portion of the meeting is spent listening to people from the community, either talking about a specific issue that's on the agenda or anything else they want to talk about. And I probably enjoy that part of it as much as any. I've had to learn new issues, housing, marijuana, development, environmental issues. When I finished law school, I'd never heard of the term CEQA until I moved up here and learned that they were going to build a CHP facility across the street from our new housing development. And that's what really got me involved in community affairs in Goleta, was trying to organize people to oppose that. In the process of doing that, meeting all kinds of people. But one of the things I learned was that there's this thing called CEQA. And it's a process I think badly needs reformed in California, but we have it, we're stuck with it. So I had to learn all about that. I had to learn about the housing law, and now that the legislature has passed a whole bunch of new housing laws, we have to learn about those as well. And I've enjoyed that part of it.
Thank you, I appreciate that, because this is even different from either of those, so.
I
it's
feel like I'm
interesting.
getting a well-rounded education
yeah,
here.
that's
Now
right.
I'm going to learn about education.
You learn the rest of your life or something. Greg?
Boy. You know, we have a lot of issues that we deal with, and they're kind of diverse, yet we just see all these issues as affecting our campus, our school. And my mic is on, I think. I'm not talking into it loud enough? Sorry. We have many issues that we're faced with, and they're diverse, but they seem to come together because we look at all these different diverse issues as how it affects us, the school, our students, and our community. And you mentioned, money, the taxes, are where our revenue comes from, who we're responsible to as trustees, and what we're responsible for, I guess. And a couple other topics here were brought up, and a couple of those are some of my favorite topics. But one of the concerns I'm interested in is what words you might have to say about one problem we have with underprepared students that finally make it their way to us, whether they were encouraged to because we outreached or they just came. And, how do they get a high school diploma and still aren't ready? Kind of a big dilemma. Do you have any thoughts at all on the general subject? I'm not trying to make
Well,
it too specific.
it's interesting because this afternoon when I was reading some of the materials before this meeting, I was reading, I can't remember what the document was, about one of the things that you do here is try to, at least it's a goal of the college, is to work with people that aren't really prepared for the academic rigor of 2 years of study so they can go on to a college, or even vocational training, whether it's in language skills that might be lacking for some minorities, or whether it's just a student that didn't pay attention in high school and maybe got religion late in the game, and now really does want to learn, but they need help. So from everything I've read and just thinking about it, I think that's a critical thing to do here, because what seems to me that what the community college is doing is taking students that aren't going to Cal Poly or Long Beach State or Stanford or some other school, and this is a place for them to have an opportunity. And so I think it must be, I hope it's a critical component to work with those students in some sort of organized program to give them the skills they need to succeed here, first of all. And if they can succeed here, they can succeed elsewhere.
Thank you. Marcia.
Well, I join the others in thanking you for applying. To a job like this and join us. And so thank you for taking that effort and for coming today. You have mentioned that you've been active in Goleta since you retired here, basically. And I'm wondering if you could give us some more information about that and how that led to your community ties within the area of your district that might be helpful to the board and to the college in pursuing future relationships and communication.
Sure. Well, it started again with our fight against I hate to say fight against the CHP. We weren't really opposing the CHP, we just didn't want them to build their facility there. And we ended up on very good terms. But also next to this site where they wanted to build the CHP is something called the Elwood Peaker Plant. All of the Santa Barbara, Goleta, Carpinteria gets all their, everybody's probably heard about this with the fires, but we get all of our power from way down south, comes down over the mountain, and then down into a substation in Goleta. So this peaker plant was built years ago, before there was any neighborhood. And it's there in case the power goes out. It's a natural gas plant, and they were seeking from the California Utility Commission the opportunity to refurbish the plant. And in talking to some people in my area who had met on the CHP fight, who were involved in environmental issues, we organized another group to oppose the company being able to refurbish the plant. We want the plant closed down. So this has caused me to learn a lot about environmental issues, power issues, and I met a lot of the people involved in environmental issues in Goleta and Santa Barbara as a result. We also have in our area another subject, and that's the Venico onshore processing plant that's connected to Platform Holly, which is out in the ocean. As you may have all heard, Venico just recently went bankrupt. Before that happened, the processing plant was on a site that's right on the ocean. It could be a wonderful recreation area, and the county actually zoned it recreational 1990. And then when Goleta became a city, they kept that zoning, and I was, before I got on the Planning Commission, was working with a group to convince the city to set an end date for that plant so that they would shut down, which would cause them to shut down the platform. As it turned out, they went bankrupt because of the oil spill, the pipeline spill a couple of years ago. They weren't pumping any oil, and the price of oil was way down. So we ended up prevailing, but not necessarily because of our organization, but because of the economy, really, and the pipeline spill. But that got me to meet other people. It got me to meet people at the Bacara because they're right next to it. So each one of these activities was expanding my reach and causing me to meet other people. And I've been involved. There's issues involving the butterfly preserve up in our area. They want to cut down a bunch of trees. I sometimes have to take off my Planning Commission hat and put on my citizen hat, but I've continued to be involved with these groups. I joined an organization called the Goodland Coalition, and they're a long-time organization in Goleta that promoted the city becoming a city, and they're very prominent in pushing for smart growth in Goleta. There's a tremendous issue in Goleta about traffic and people feeling there's been too much growth, so I've had to learn about those issues as well. So,
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. We appreciate your time.
I hope I've answered your questions, and I just want to, before I depart, just thank you for listening to me and having the opportunity to be here. The more time I've spent thinking about this, the more excited I am about the possibility I could serve. So, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. I guess I ran out of time. That's why I started with him, 'cause I wanted to. Sorry, Trustee Aboud said student trustee Panbetchy didn't get to ask, and so that's why I started with you. But so in the next round, if you'd like me to, don't pass it up, and then,
Sure.
yeah.
Wrote it down.
Yes, so I wanted to give that courtesy to you, because for the 15-minute timer. So now, we'll start that way. Now we'd like to invite Mr. Cameron Sublette to the podium, please.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, Mr. Sublette.
Thank you.
You may start
I can
with,
start?
with whatever questions you chose.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, it's fantastic to be here, back at Santa Barbara City College. I don't know if I have any former colleagues in the room, or I have a former student in the room, but if you did not see, used to teach here at this institution since 2008 until just recently I left for a new appointment, and I haven't really been back, but it's fantastic to be here and to have this opportunity. So I got to choose 4 of the 6 questions to respond to, and I thought I would just go down in the order in which I chose. So I chose questions 1, 2, 5, and 6. First question was, why are you interested in becoming a member of this Board of Trustees? What steps did you take before applying to learn about the college and trustee job and decide whether this would be a good fit for you? So in bullet points, I could say my answer to the first part of the question, why are you interested in becoming a member of this Board of Trustees? First, I study community colleges as an academic. My current position is at Pepperdine University in the Graduate School of Education and Psychology. My graduate degree is in education policy, leadership, and research methods. And my particular area of academic interest is in higher education policy. And having a background working as a faculty member here, I directed my research interest in community college policy in particular. I think you'll see if you take a look at the work I've done in the past, my particular area of interests are in online learning in community colleges, career and technical education, and so that's the first reason why I'd want to be a part of this particular Board of Trustees. Second, I worked here at Santa Barbara City College for many number of years, and I'm familiar with the faculty, I'm familiar with the students, familiar with the ebb and flows of the history of this institution. And I feel like I could bring an intimate knowledge of this particular institution to the decision-making process. Third, I went to a community college for a brief time, but nevertheless, that does give me a personal connection to the mission of the California Community College system. I attended San Diego Canyon Community College for a brief spell, but I still reflect on my time there very fondly. My wife attended the same community college. In fact, we went to the same classes together, and our experience there directly made an impact on us. And so I think those are just 3 reasons to answer the first part of the question, why I'd want to be a member of this particular Board of Trustees. What steps did you take before applying? Well, first I started to read as a true academic and researcher. I went and did a bunch of research. I went to the California, or the League of California, or Community Colleges of California, and I read the voluminous Board of Trustees handbook, I think it is. Well, a good portion of it. I didn't read the whole thing. And it was, I don't know what this says about me as an individual, but I thought rather exciting. It seems like a very important responsibility, one to be taken seriously. I think in the manual itself it says the position of a trustee is grave or of consequence, but when it's done well, there's no greater reward or something like that, which I thought was beautifully put. How did I decide whether this would be a good fit for me? Well, I weighed my academic background, the things that I research. I weighed my personal experience as a former faculty member here, first as an adjunct and then as a full-time tenured faculty. And then I weighed my personal experience as a former community college student and as a person that cares deeply and passionately about the mission of this particular institution and the broader mission of the California Community College system as a whole. And those factors weighed simultaneously on me as I made my decision. So that's my answer to the first question. What do you see as the major issues facing Santa Barbara City College in the next decade, and how do you think you might contribute to their resolution? Well, I would like to think I wouldn't be so bold as to in any way think I might find resolution to the looming issues that the community college system is facing at the moment. But serving on this body would definitely enable me a small but important voice So I think we all are aware that the paradigm of higher education is changing, broadly speaking. And I think that gives me, but I think all of us that care about higher education and community colleges broadly, a little bit of fear and trepidation. It seems the foundation is shifting below us. When MOOCs came out, that was when I really started to freak out and panic about the future of higher education. And I'm only now, I'm more concerned probably than I was back then. Technology is changing rapidly, and even though MOOCs have kind of fizzled out, online learning is a growing component of higher education and community colleges in particular, and that's going to change the students we serve, how many we serve, and how we serve them, and that's something that we need to consider heavily in our decision-making processes. Student equity is something that is a looming issue in my mind for this institution and all community colleges. Student achievement and access are certainly important, and I think in our national dialogue and debate we do a good job of emphasizing the need or the importance for access, but unfortunately I personally feel like the importance of equity gets a little bit drowned out in those conversations. I know that the state of California is pushing pretty heavily on improving outcomes for our equity populations, but nevertheless, as the country and as our community continues to become more diverse, it's going to be a looming issue moving forward in the next decade. I think that the workforce is changing. As technology improves, there's going to be more automation in the workplace, and that's going to require us to change the skills that we're able to provide students with. And I think if we were a wise and forward-thinking body, we would consider that in advance before that sneaks up on us. Yeah, so that's what I have at the moment. Question 5. Assuming that a vote taken on a particular issue did not go your way, how would you respond? What course of action might you anticipate taking? Well, I don't really know. I guess my answer is it depends on the issue. I know I wouldn't take it personal, but I do know I wouldn't quit. I'm not the type of person to walk away from something. If I voted on a particular issue and it didn't go my way, I wouldn't just pack up and then walk away from the issue. I would like to believe that if I voted for something, it's because I had a conviction for it, and just because it didn't go my way, I would like to think I wouldn't walk away from that particular issue. I would probably continue researching it, following it, advocating for it, so that if the issue ever did come back up again, I would be still informed on the issue and I could contribute to that discussion. But I really can't speak in particulars at this moment because it depends on the issue and it depends on the climate and the context in which that decision was made. But I could assure you all that I wouldn't take it personal, or I would at least try not to. I know that gets hard. And the last question, if major reductions in funding were to occur, what would be your priorities for the most important programs or services to retain? In your previous work, how have you determined priorities for funding or staff time? And I'm going to punt and say it depends on that issue. I'm not about to take this podium and list off the things that I think are most important at this institution. So I would say it depends. It's impossible to say. It's impossible for me to say. It's impossible for any of us to say what would be the most important programs or services. I think we all have varying opinions on that issue. But I can say that my belief is that whatever decisions that this body would make, those decisions would need to be made in full consultation with all stakeholders involved. And that involves the community, that's the faculty, that's the students, that's the employers in this community that have a direct stake in the students that come through this institution. So I don't know. I have worked at this institution when those cuts were made. And I remember them markedly following the economic downturn in 2008, when all of a sudden, there wasn't the TLUs in each department to go around, and all of a sudden the courses we wanted to teach couldn't be taught. But what I do know is that any decision that is made needs to be made in consultation with various folks, and whatever decision is made needs to ensure that the mission, the goal, of this institution remains intact. So that's my responses to the prepared questions.
5 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Solet. You still have 5 minutes, and you can use that time to help us learn more.
Wonderful. So a little bit more about me. I taught here from 2008 until just recently, where I, like I said, took a new academic appointment. I was sad to leave, very sad to leave. I loved every single moment in the classroom here. I still stay in close contact with my students, and I still see them around town I just got a free tiramisu the other day from a former student, and it's just wonderful. My time here was my most treasured time of my professional career, and no doubt shaped my professional trajectory. I didn't come here as a person concerned with education or education policy. I came here to teach communication. That's my original background, teaching public speaking and argumentation and debate. And when I got here, I fell in love with the students, and I fell in love with the intricacies of this institution and the complex challenges that face these institutions. And so I went to UCSB while I was still teaching here and studied education policy because I wanted to make a change in the community college system. And I think I've done that so far with my academic work. But I see this as a fantastic opportunity to contribute in other ways. And really that's what I'm looking for, is an opportunity to serve the institution that served me so well. As I said, I went to a community college. My wife went to community college. My wife continues to work here in the Career Center. I'm a first-generation college student, which is another reason why I think I connected so well with my students in the classroom. I continue to be the only sublet to have a college degree, which is pretty fantastic, but it does connect me to some of the challenges that our students face. It's hard to be that vanguard in your own family. Sometimes, in the case of my family, there was tremendous support, but in other families, there's not that support. And even when there is that support, there's so many challenges. And so, once again, I really loved my time in the classroom. And I also want to say that on this board, in the decision-making process, I think it's important to remember, and this is not an indictment at all, but this is kind of, I guess, a forewarning to me of were I to take a seat, that any decision that is made at that table directly impacts students in tangible ways, and that's something that's a really heavy but awesome responsibility.
2.5 minutes?
Mr.
But I might,
Sublet, you
don't think
can't.
there's any requirement that you.
No, there isn't, and it's your time, it's what we've allotted, and if you felt like you wanted to go back to it, there are 2 questions that, you did not get to, but it's totally, you can also conclude this portion of your time with us.
I will say another answer I had to one of the question is what preparation I had done, in addition to printing out the trustees handbook earlier today. I have been watching a lot of past board meetings online and reading the minutes and everything, so I have caught up somewhat to speed on contemporary issues facing this body. Left that part out, but yeah, I'll yield the rest of my time.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time. So the second part of this is opening it up to the trustees to ask any follow-up questions. And student trustee Pambechi, would you like to start?
Sure. So one of the issues that I think students have come across is in terms of tutoring. We've had quite a few cuts with tutors, and in general with student workers. Minimum wage it's really hard to live on a minimum wage in Santa Barbara, and a lot of people are suffering, and that's a greater economic question, but it's we're also paying minimum wage to our students, and kind of, I guess, tangential to that, with our adjunct faculty. I am not directly involved with adjunct faculty, but I have heard around, and I have been told by some of our adjunct faculty and professors that it's very difficult to, and across California, to kind of not have a voice in terms of representation, a union representation. So what are your views about that, revitalizing a union movement at the college?
Well, I'm not going to speak to the revitalization of a union movement because I would be ill-informed to speak on that topic. I do know that it's contentious, and there are arguments of merit on both sides. I will say that it's unfortunate that there's a reduction in tutors. I don't know if you're speaking in particular of the Gateway program or what, but I understand from firsthand experience the role of these tutors. I used to have a number of them in my own classes, and they were instrumental in helping us achieve the student learning outcomes that were set out at the beginning of the semester. And students just oftentimes, formed fantastic relationships with them. So yeah, that's wonderful. And then the adjuncts. I understand what it's like to be an adjunct at this college. I was one, and I understand the number of issues of being an adjunct or a contingent faculty at a community college or elsewhere. It is hard. It's a struggle, and I think the best I can do is reflect on my own experience there and make sure I stay current with the issues there. That's probably one of the major issues facing Santa Barbara City College, but it's not even Santa Barbara City College. It's the system in general. The quote-unquote adjunctification of the faculty is an important issue that we must address and take seriously. But I don't have answers to those questions for you tonight, David.
Well, thank you very much for applying. We are deeply grateful for the effort, your interest, and commitment to take on this application and come see us about it. You have obviously a lot of familiarity with SBCC. Could you expand a bit about your familiarity with your district, with activities within the district, people that you have become involved with, or issues, anything like that, that would facilitate our role as people who represent community viewpoints and people who facilitate communication with the community about the college?
Yeah, I know firsthand from interacting with individuals in my district that Santa Barbara City College plays a prominent role in so many people's lives here. It's amazing. Just going to get food or lunch or coffee or anything, you engage with people, and sure enough, if you probe, you find that there's some sort of connection with this institution, with virtually everybody here. And when you probe a little bit deeper, I say, they say, well, my son or my daughter goes to Santa Barbara Community College, and so you ask a little bit more, I ask more questions, and it seems a pervasive issue for a lot of individuals in my district, and I think this goes beyond, is the cost of higher education. And I know that we don't, and this particular body, have direct control over the levers there, but that seems to be an issue that is recurring and on the minds of a lot of people. It seems like people want knowledge about this institution, the pros and the cons of attending this institution versus straight up to going to a 4-year. And so those are conversations I always enjoy having with individuals. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
Great.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for coming here and investing this time and talking to us. And it's really a pleasure to have more than one candidate to look at and to actually get to make a decision instead of accept someone that's willing to sit down with us and try. I think I'd like to ask you about something. Since you're so familiar with the institutions, there's many issues we deal with, and that are diverse. And but one of the areas that we try to work in is not to overstep our bounds, but to take our responsibility seriously. For that, we hear terms, and maybe you've just recently read those when you went through the handbook and whatever, about participatory government, about transparency in government. But and maybe you learned something about what we are actually as a board responsible for And do our decisions really matter if it's already been done for us? Maybe you could like to, from your past experience of what you've seen, and since you're vying for a seat at this table, I'd like to hear your kind of opinion on that. Anything you have to say will help.
Yeah, so, yeah, the concept of shared governance is at the heart of this institution and all higher education institutions, I would wager in advance. And it's something that should be taken very seriously. And there's been times with this body at this institution when there's been expression that the notion of shared governance wasn't fully respected and fully appreciated. And so those issues pop up frequently. And that's not an indictment, that's not a criticism. I think that is part of the process of shared governance. When a decision is made, there's the opportunity for people to express dismay or pleasure with that decision or the process itself. But that dialogue is valuable, and it's very important. And I got the pleasure of watching some of that dialogue on YouTube earlier today or the past several days, and at times it's pretty messy, and it seems like unpleasant, but it's at the core of the decision-making process here. I did read in the manual a number of lines that gave me pause because they seemed to contradict one another. At times it said that the Board of Trustees is to make decisions, and I think that language was declarative that way, make decisions, but in other parts of the manual it's not to make the decisions, it's to facilitate the decision-making process. To not necessarily make policy, but to ensure that policy can be made, which is legalistic in my mind, and I would love to maybe talk with you individually about your own perspective on that issue. But I am aware of the sensitivity and the importance of the concept of shared governance, and that's why I feel strongly, and I tried to answer that in number 6, that I don't know what particular programs this institution should prioritize if, in fact, there was a reduction in funding. But I do know to respect the process, and that is if there is a decision to be made, that it needs to be made in consultation with various stakeholders, and that's faculty, community, parents, students, and that's all I can say.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you did.
I also want to join the chorus here in thanking you for applying. I appreciate your time today and your willingness to serve. It's good. One of the things that we are doing, because we are each in a separate district now. When I was first elected, we were elected overall, but now we each have a district. So your district would be out in Goleta. And if we thought about ever having a bond measure, trying to put a bond measure on, how does that connect? I mean, what would you do to try to get some community support out there for a bond measure?
Right. Because community support is so important, right? That's the,
Right.
yeah. So I do know the history here with the recent bond measure, which was unfortunate. I would say if given the opportunity to, to rally support for a bond measure, I would make sure I'm engaged with my community, which was another one of the important aspects of being a trustee member I read in the manual, was to engage with your community, not to just make deliberations and decisions, but to in fact attend events and engage with the people that you represent, the citizenry that you're representing, and I would enjoy that thoroughly. I would enjoy engaging my community as a representative of this institution, as a person that would listen well, would listen deeply, would listen humbly, would listen respectfully, and would then be able or in a position to come and voice concerns, to voice ideas. But I think there's really fewer individuals that are as passionate about the mission of this particular institution than I am. And so I think it would be an honor to have the opportunity to engage the individuals in my community about the importance of the work that's being done here. So in the event that there was a bond measure, we would have the support of that community because it would be seen as a worthwhile return on investment, as an investment in the future of the people that we share the streets with around here.
Thank you.
Well, I also want to express my gratitude to you for applying. This is a volunteer job, no matter what they say. If you're in it for the money, this is a good time to withdraw.
I didn't even know there was money.
You won't be surprised. My question is a follow-up to Marty's, and it relates to the bond measure. In the sense of engaging your community in Goleta, it would be helpful to know something about how you have in the past been engaged in the Goleta community, and how you might approach this when next time because the buildings are still there, they're still in need, and we do need the bond measure. How'd you do that?
Well, I wouldn't attest to doing anything dramatically different than I think what I've done in the past, and that is to honestly be a good person first and foremost, be a good neighbor, because people know where you work, and it's a small town, so be a good human being, be a good parent, which I try to be, so that's the small stuff. We're relatively new to the Goleta area. Before moving to Goleta, we lived in Santa Barbara. That's where we still attend church, Trinity on State Street. Our children go to the Early Learning Center across the street, and so in Goleta, we really haven't had a tremendous amount of time to make an impact in our community like we have more locally here, but at Trinity, I volunteer there on the Children's Youth Council, where people also know I'm an educator, where people also know that I worked at Santa Barbara City College. Here at the Early Learning Center, we help revitalize their back play area. And so if opportunities were to present themselves in the Goleta area, I'd be happy to volunteer. But at the current moment, I think I do a good job just by caring about what I do as an educator and caring about the mission of this institution. But again, going back to the earlier question, if a bond measure were to present itself and we were to go for that, it would be a tremendous priority for us as an institution. I'm aware of that, and I think as a representative of my community, I would do whatever I can by engaging the community in events that are around, whether that's revitalizing Lake Los Carneros, which is where we live really close by, if that's going on Calle Real and on Halloween where they have the fire trucks and the ambulances and everything line up and we take our kids down. It would be going to those events like we already do, but making sure that people know that we as an institution are really seeking out their support and what we're trying to do here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my question is regarding housing. So it's a big issue that our students face. It's a barrier to succeed in college. What do you think is a way to alleviate this issue for our students, and what's the college's role in it?
Well, could you speak more to the issue at hand? I know that, there's a lot of students and housing is incredibly expensive here.
It's a multifaceted issue, from housing security to being able to afford it and being able to find it. But I think the biggest issue is being able to afford it, because it is expensive, and if you have to work 2 jobs to pay your rent, then you're not going to succeed in school.
Right. Was that a time in my...
It was, but if you had a last-minute sentence to follow up with that, you can.
Yeah, I'm aware of the expensive, how much it costs to live in this area, which I think directly impacts our enrollments here. So that's an important issue. I do know that there's been local initiatives and discussions in this body to address that, whether or not it's building more housing here closer to campus, but that's going to have community support to make that decision, right? So I can't speak to specifics on that one, but I do know that everybody needs to be brought in on that discussion because it affects everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sublette, for your time. Well, we are still at item 4.1, and this brings us to the conclusion of the interviews. So the second phase, because this item is a discussion item, is for the board to deliberate on the candidates. As a board, really this is our time to discuss. I can start with student trustee Panvecchi, but please feel free to follow up with student trustee Panvecchi and vice versa. As we discuss, it makes us think of something we hadn't thought of before. This is a time where if a single candidate comes up as a top choice, we can definitely do a straw poll. But we'll start here with a discussion, knowing that item 4.2 will be a motion, if so be, to appoint a trustee to fill Dr. Kugler's seat. So, student trustee Panvecchi, with your permission, we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I thought both candidates were pretty strong candidates. One has a lot of experience with mediation and kind of community involvement in that arena, and another more with the school. And I had Cam Sublet for public speaking. He was a really good professor from my direct experience, really heard us out. That's my kind of personal connection. I really liked kind of Cam's presentation. I think that experience at the college is very important, and I think it's very valuable. Kind of a different perspective being brought, knowing the inner workings and things like that. So that's kind of what I have to say about that, and I'd love to hear your opinions as well.
So we're going around?
Sure, unless you had any follow-ups or anything that.
Well, I agree with David that we have two excellent candidates and very different candidates, I think. Cameron has obviously got a deep experience with the institution and a specialty in the academic aspects as well of community colleges and online classes and things like that. For me, Robert Miller brings a greater depth of world experience, a broader set of experiences that contribute, I think, to the job that we at this policy level do. And also, for me, it is an important element to have that community involvement, and he has obviously really become involved in his community in the time that he has lived there. It's clearly enabled him to reach out and become part of quite a number of different groups, and thereby put him in a position to advance the interests of the college in both listening, which is something he emphasized, and in communicating the message of the importance of the college when we get to that stage, and we're not there yet. People don't need to start thinking we're there, but we are certainly thinking about the future and our need for a bond measure down the road. So those are my thoughts.
I guess it's my turn then. It's really a pleasure. I think I mentioned already that we get to choose instead of praying that we get someone that would donate their time to serve. What I've observed since being on this board and being on other boards, this one of the biggest assets that we possess as a board. Doesn't mean we're perfect, but it sure helps. Every point of view seems to get discussed and talked about, considered openly, and I think that's because we're a diverse group of people. And we have different backgrounds. We came from different areas, maybe different life experiences, but we definitely have a really great assortment of education and life experiences in a diverse group, and I think that makes us strong. And maybe sometimes too strong, but mostly it makes us, we're a group of open-minded people that I think have become fairly skilled at listening. I I feel that we have quite a bit of representation of ex-faculty member like Peter over here, sitting on the board, and we have a lot of expertise. We have about how the system works and a lot of good advice coming from Dr. Beebe and others that give us feedback and input. And so I like the idea of diversity, and I was very impressed with Cameron's presentation, but I was a little bit more impressed by Robert Miller for the reasons I've stated. So that's my comments so far.
I think we're really lucky. We have two good candidates.
Absolutely.
I really, I don't say that lightly because that doesn't always happen like that, but I think either way, we're not going to go astray in any way. I think, you know, it's interesting to me, if we could find a clone for Mary Ann. We need somebody who knows all about, you know, education from Michigan and all that sort of thing, but that's not going to work like that. So in looking at both their strengths, I mean, Cameron is just really understands this college, and I think he would, I think he understands too how to connect with his community. He kind of mentioned some ideas out in Goleta, I mean. On the other hand, Robert Miller has already connected with his community in a great way. So from my point of view, I think we can use somebody like Mr. Miller who talks about being a good listener and a quick study and all that sort of thing. But I'll tell you, if it goes the other way, I don't think we're going to lose either way, so.
The reality is that we're a board of 7 rather than 8, so we have to make a choice. I was impressed by both candidates as well. I was very impressed by Cameron's willingness to read the league handbook. That takes a certain amount of diligence,
Fortitude.
willingness to experience pain. I don't know.
Caffeine, it was caffeine.
But at least he admitted, and that was a degree of honesty, that he didn't read the whole thing. He talked a little bit about MOOCs and was concerned about it. I share that concern. That has to do with mass online courses, and but I don't think that that's in our future. I was impressed that he was focused on student equity, as we've discussed on this board any number of times. In response to question 5, he wasn't taking a defeat personally, and I thought that was a positive thing. And clearly he loves this institution, and that's primarily why he's doing this. I was impressed by Bob Miller. He was candid. He said that he was not an expert in educational policy, and, but that he would be a quick study, and I was very impressed with that. And it seemed to me that he gave evidence of that as he went along. My question on the bond issue was, I think he responded to that well, with a focus on the institutions in Goleta with which he is already in contact, and that he would be helpful in a future bond election, not just a bond election, but with community relations in Goleta. His experience as a mediator, I think, would be very helpful to us as well. The fact that he did not run out of time. He had time left over was impressive. In other words, he knows how to be brief, which I think this is. We could send that level of expertise to Washington, D.C. With some real appeal. He seems to understand the distinction between positions and issues, positions and interests, and that itself was very impressive. We can all get really locked up on a position, but that locking up may be contrary to our long-range best interest. So I am leading in the direction of Mr. Miller.
From reading the applications, I think I was inclined to support Cameron, but after the interviews, I am supporting Robert, and I have a few different reasons for both. I think I would maybe agree with Cameron more if he was sitting at the table, but I think that Robert would bring more to the board of what we need in terms of engaging Goleta. I think that's more important than me agreeing with someone more often. I do feel that Robert needs to learn more about higher education, but it is a hard topic to learn about. I really like that Cameron knows a lot about higher education policy, and he studies it, and seems like he has a good I mean, I think the online issue is coming towards us, and I'm glad he's, more, and he worked on the online committee here, so if we had to work on that issue, he would be good. But yes, I thought also his answer to question 6, which is, what would you prioritize in terms of cuts? I think that you need to answer that question if you want to be on a board that votes on cuts or not cuts. I had to answer this question when I was running. I answered it, and my answer was protect the things that serve students directly first. I think it's an easy answer, so that's why I would think that, probably shouldn't have been punted. So my support would go to Robert.
And this is a diverse thought opinion from everybody, Craig? Evidence from what you said? You said you wanted diversity in thought? I just want to commend both candidates, and I know they're not, but I think to make yourself very vulnerable, to make your personal, not very personal, but your personal information public on a board agenda, to take your time, to have the humility to go before a podium where 7 people are just an 8 or kind of looking at you. I'm sorry if I didn't say welcome, but I assumed that the podium was their welcome. I agree with Marty. I think that you could take both of them and make like a Marianne. You have such knowledge on classroom, and the teacher in me, I'm like, yes, someone that knows what teachers are going through, faculty, students, but we're not hiring, or we're not appointing anyone to be directly in the classroom with students, with faculty. In fact, the only person we can ever deal with is Dr. Beebe. Not that that's bad, but but our limitations in that end. I did appreciate Mr. Miller's genuine commitment with his community. I think that that's an area that none of us really tapped into other than Marianne with, and she did it in such a phenomenal way, having higher education background, having art, adult ed, having children, having grandchildren. I just don't think that there is a group that she wasn't able to plug into. So that in itself is going to be difficult. We're not appointing someone to replace her. We are just going to fill her spot with a new person. So with what my colleagues on the board here said, I would go with Mr. Miller. Mm-hmm. Yes, Mr. Husling, Dr. Trustee Husling.
Well, given what I've heard, I would like to move that we appoint Robert Miller as the successor to Marianne.
So this brings us to item 4.2. Is there a motion to appoint a trustee to fill governing board vacancy created by the resignation of Dr. Marianne Kugler?
I think you said that.
Yes, but I
think-
wanted to officially bring us down to that item and officially
Okay,
ask for a motion.
You are absolutely right, and I so move.
I'll second it.
It has been moved and seconded to appoint Mr. Robert Miller to fill the governing board vacancy created by the resignation of Dr. Marianne Kugler. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Are we going to have like an orientation for him so that he could get caught up to speed on issues more?
Vice President Aboud, I just heard you volunteered for something.
Yes.
Most definitely. Yes, Trustee Nielsen.
You're following up on your question, Jonathan, which is a very good one.
Yeah.
You think we should appoint among us a mentor or a couple people to make sure they're available to help him along?
Probably, let's finish our vote, and then the February 8th meeting, when we swear in Mr. Miller, then we can get the logistics of that. Most certainly. With that, are we ready for a vote? Okay.
Well, perhaps pertaining to this, I thought you said it well, that we need to extend a vote of thanks and appreciation to people for, I mean, there were 5 and only 2 survived this, and I think there may be some intimidation involved in coming in front of the microphone and having to speak to us. And I just laud them for their willingness to do this. And let's not lose either one of them. I mean, we're going to vote for Mr. Miller, but I sure want to hang on to Cameron as a supportive agent for our efforts in the future.
I'm hearing Mr. Jeff Green maybe tapping someone that can advocate for the community college mission. Yes, Trustee
No, I
Conjure.
was just going to say, I think there should be an official thank you letter as well from the board. We can figure that out on our behalf.
Most definitely.
Not just for Cameron,
Right.
For everyone,
for all the other, for the
yeah.
other three as
But Cameron saw it all the way through as well.
Cameron gets an extra star.
Extra
Special
star,
letter with the
more
gold star.
stars, more stars.
Can we do that, Angie?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That brings us to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Second? Second, okay, it's been motion and second.